Hello, hello, hello. Well, welcome back to the podcast yet again. It's known today that stress causes probably more disease, or as I like the way people say, dis-ease in people today than almost ever before, I guess. Stress is one of the leading, through science, we're learning that stress is one of the leading causes of a whole range of diseases, including cancer, autoimmune diseases, um, all types of infections and colds and sicknesses of all kinds. And so recently I just thought, well, okay, the two main stress hormones are cortisol and adrenaline, if I'm correct. Anyway, so I Google how to reduce cortisol levels, like just simply how to reduce cortisol levels, and it comes up things like get enough sunlight, eat a balanced, healthy diet, exercise enough, get enough sleep, drink enough water, all these things. And it's like, man, like we literally, the way society is set up right now, we're just not going about life in the way that is as healing and as nourishing and sort of, how would I say, just, we're not living in a holistic way that is really treating ourselves properly and taking care of our bodies and our ourselves. And so I bought a book recently. It's called, I just thought about, well, if that's the case and it's that simple and that's all we have to do to reduce these cortisol levels and noradrenaline and adrenaline and all these things that are creating stress within our body. And we know that things such as meditation as well are a massive help to reducing our stress levels. And so it just got me thinking that all these things are so basic. So going back to basics, I bought a book called Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor. And it's basically just teaching us how little we know about how to breathe properly. We've forgotten all of this, and we've forgotten just how essential and important breathing is. It's literally what keeps us alive. We do it unconsciously, subconsciously, and consciously, but when we can really take control of our breath and consciously breathe in the way that we're supposed to, we can not only reduce stress levels, but we can truly heal and live our lives, to the best way that they can be lived. If we can harness our breathing and how to breathe properly, we're able to. Well, I'll let the book. I'll read a bit of the book and I'll let the book explain that, but. It's just, it's so empowering to know that we have the power within us to literally heal ourselves of a whole range of different things just by living in the appropriate way that is in alignment with our healing and in alignment with our health and keeping ourselves at our healthiest. And so I'll open the book up now. How about I read the blurb on the back? I'll start with that. Okay, so this is the blurb. Sorry about the little notifications popping up. I just got to quickly turn on to Do Not Disturb as I do this podcast. There we go. So, this is the blurb for Breathe. Breath is the title of the book. No matter what you eat, how much you exercise, how skinny or young or wise you are, none of it matters if you're not breathing properly. There is nothing more essential to our health and well-being than breathing. Take air in, let it out, repeat 25,000 times a day. Yet, as a species, humans have lost the ability to breathe correctly with grave consequences. Journalist James Nestor travels the world to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it. The answers aren't found in pulmonology labs, as we might expect, but in the muddy digs of ancient burial sites, secret Soviet facilities, New Jersey choir schools, and the smoggy streets of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Nestor tracks down men and women exploring the hidden science behind ancient breathing practices like pranayama, sudarshan kriya, and tumo, and teams up with pulmonary tinkerers to scientifically test long-held beliefs about how we breathe. Modern research is showing us that making even slight adjustments to the way we inhale and exhale can jumpstart athletic performance, rejuvenate internal organs, halt snoring, allergies, asthma, and autoimmune disease, and even straighten scoliotic spines. None of this should be possible, and yet it is. Drawing on thousands of years of medical texts and recent cutting-edge studies in pulmonology, psychology, biochemistry, and human physiology, breath turns the conventional wisdom of what we thought we knew about our most basic biological function on its head. You will never breathe the same again. So before I delve too much further into this book, I'm going to read probably the introduction or somewhere out of it that I found interesting that I think will be worth value to you guys. How about we start with a little breathing exercise? How about that, just to get ourselves present, allow ourselves the time to be grateful and truly appreciate just how lucky we are to be able to breathe in this beautiful air that gives us life and reduces stress and just does a whole range, keeps us alive, So we're going to start by breathing in through the nose for a count of 6 and out. We're going to breathe in for a count of 4. I'll count. We're going to hold it at the top for 4, and then we're going to breathe out for a count of 6. So when I say in, breathe in. When I say hold, hold. And when I breathe out, just breathe out slowly and deeply. Ready? Let's go. All right, let's breathe in. Hold. Out. Through the mouth. We're going to do 5 of these. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. 2 to go. In. Hold. Out. Long and slow out the mouth. 1 more, and then we'll get into the introduction of this book. Okay. In. Hold. Out. Wonderful. And notice just how you feel now compared to how you felt before you did those 5 conscious inhalations and exhalations. Just pay attention and see how you feel. Tune into your body. What senses are you feeling? How are you perceiving this moment? Those sort of things. Now, I'll get to the part that I'd like to read out of this book. So it was published in 2020, so it's a very recent book, which I love. There's new information, and since we live in the age of information where we have access to, as much information more information than we've ever had access to in human history at the click of a button, it's also important to focus our attention on things that are going to be beneficial to us. If we focus our attention on things that are negative and disruptive and detrimental to our being, then that's exactly what it's going to be, because we are energetic beings, and where we focus our attention, where we place our attention, is where we place our energy. So if we're placing our attention on negative things, our energy goes there, and we feel energetically in a negative way. So we must cultivate positive thinking habits. And so here we go. So this is this quote that I'm about to read from the start of Breath was from the Zhou dynasty, 500 BC, and it was a stone inscription. They wrote it on a stone, so this is how important they believed it to be back then in the Zhou dynasty in the eastern parts of the world. In transporting the breath, the inhalation must be full. When it is full, it has big capacity. When it has big capacity, it can be extended. When it is extended, it can penetrate downward. When it penetrates downward, it will become calmly settled. When it is calmly settled, it will be strong and firm. When it is strong and firm, it will germinate. When it germinates, it will grow. When it grows, it will retreat upward. When it retreats upward, it will reach the top of the head. The secret power of providence moves above. The secret power of the earth moves below. He who follows this will live. He who acts against this will die. It's quite a profound quote there. Very powerful. Okay, so I'll read the introduction. How long does it go for? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Alright, 10 pages. But just follow along, because I really do think we can all get something out of this, and something that is going to be beneficial and just will make you a little more conscious, because it'll make you a little more conscious of how you breathe. And our breathing is so important, so much more important than we believe, and we've been taught to believe, and it's overlooked a lot. So here we go. The introduction of Breath by James Nestor. The place looked like something out of Amityville. All paint-chipped walls, dusty windows, and menacing shadows cast by moonlight. I walked through a gate, up a flight of creaking steps, and knocked on the door. When it swung open, a woman in her 30s with woolly eyebrows and oversized white teeth welcomed me inside. She asked me to take off my shoes, then led me to a cavernous living room, its ceiling painted sky blue with wispy clouds. I took a seat below a window that rattled in the breeze and watched through the jaundiced streetlight as others walked in. A guy with prisoner eyes, a stern-faced man with Jerry Lewis bangs, a blonde woman with an off-center bindi on her forehead. Through the rustle of shuffling feet and whispered hellos, a truck rumbled down the street blasting Paper Planes, the inescapable anthem of the day. I removed my belt, loosened the top button on my jeans, and settled in. I'd come here on the recommendation of my doctor, who'd told me a breathing class could help. It could help strengthen my failing lungs, calm my frazzled mind, maybe give me some perspective. For the past few months, I'd been going through a rough patch. My job was stressing me out, and my 130-year-old house was falling apart. I'd just recovered from pneumonia, which I'd also had the year before and the year before that. I was spending most of my time at home wheezing, working, and eating 3 meals out of the same bowl while hunched over week-old newspapers on the couch. I was in a rut, physically, mentally, and otherwise. After a few months of living this way, I took my doctor's advice and signed up for an introductory course in breathing to learn a technique called Sudarshan Kriya. At 7 p.m, the bushy-browed woman locked the front door, sat in the middle of the group, inserted a cassette tape into a beat-up boombox, and pressed play. She told us to close our eyes. Through hissing static, the voice of a man with an Indian accent flowed from the speakers. It was squeaky, lilting, and too melodious to sound natural, as if it had been taken from a cartoon. The voice instructed us to inhale slowly through our noses, then to exhale slowly, to focus on our breath. We repeated this process for a few minutes. I reached over to a pile of blankets and wrapped one around my legs to keep my stocking feet warm beneath the drafty window. I kept breathing, but nothing happened. No calmness swept over me, no tension released from my tight muscles, nothing. 10, maybe 20 minutes passed. I started getting annoyed and a bit resentful that I'd chosen to spend my evening inhaling dusty air on the floor of an old Victorian. I opened my eyes and looked around. Everyone had the same somber, bored look. Prisoner eyes appeared to be sleeping. Jerry Lewis looked like he was relieving himself. Bindi sat frozen with a Cheshire cat smile on her face. I thought about getting up and leaving, but I didn't want to be rude. The session was free. The instructor wasn't paid to be here. I needed to respect her charity, so I closed my eyes again, wrapped the blanket a little tighter, and kept breathing. Then something happened. I wasn't conscious of any transformation taking place. I never felt I never felt myself relax or the swarm of nagging thoughts leave my head, but it was as if I'd been taken from one place and deposited somewhere else. It happened in an instant. The tape came to an end and I opened my eyes. There was something wet on my head. I lifted my hand to wipe it off and noticed my hair was sopping. I ran my hand down my face, felt the sting of sweat in my eyes, and tasted salt. I looked down at my torso and noticed sweat blotches on my sweater and jeans. The temperature in the room was about 68 degrees, much cooler than beneath the drafty window. I'm guessing that was 68 degrees Fahrenheit, just for everyone wants to know. Everyone had been covered in jackets and hoodies to keep warm, but I had somehow sweated through my clothes as if I'd just run a marathon. The instructor approached and asked if I was okay, if I'd been sick or had a fever. I told her I felt perfectly fine. Then she said something about the body's heat and how each inhaled breath provides us with new energy and each exhale releases old, stale energy. I tried to take it in, but was having trouble focusing. I was preoccupied with how I was going to ride my bike 3 miles home from the Haight-Ashbury in sweat-soaked clothes. The next day I felt even better. As advertised, there was a feeling of calm and quiet that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I slept well. The little things in life didn't bother me as much. The tension was gone from my shoulders and neck. This lasted a few days before the feeling faded out. What exactly happened? How did sitting cross-legged in a funky house and breathing for an hour trigger such a profound reaction? I returned to the breathing class the next week. Same experience, fewer waterworks. I didn't mention any of it to family members or friends, but I worked to understand what had happened, and I spent the next several years trying to figure it out. Over that span of time, I fixed up my house, got out of my funk, and got a lead that might answer some of my questions about breathing. I went to Greece to write a story on free diving, the ancient practice of diving hundreds of feet below the water's surface on a single breath of air. Between dives, I interviewed dozens of experts, hoping to gain some perspective on what they did and why. I wanted to know how these unassuming-looking people, software engineers, advertising executives, biologists, and physicians, had trained their bodies to go without air for 12 minutes at a time, diving to depths far beyond what scientists thought possible. When most people go underwater in a pool, they bail out at 10 feet after just a few seconds, ears screaming. The freedivers told me they'd previously been most people. Their transformation was a matter of training. They'd coaxed their lungs to work harder, to tap the pulmonary capabilities that the rest of us ignore. They insisted they weren't special. Anyone in reasonable health willing to put in the hours could dive to 100, 200, even 300 feet. It didn't matter how old you were, how much you weighed, or what your genetic makeup was. To freedive, they said, all anyone had to do was master the art of breathing. To them, breathing wasn't an unconscious act. It wasn't something they just did. It was a force, a medicine, and a mechanism through which they could gain an almost superhuman power. There are many ways to breathe as there are as many ways to breathe as there are foods to eat, said one female instructor who had held her breath for more than 8 minutes and once dived below 300 feet. And each way we breathe will affect our bodies in different ways. Another diver told me that some methods of breathing will nourish our brains while others will kill neurons. Some will make us healthy while others will hasten our death. They told crazy stories about how they'd breathed in ways that expanded the size of their lungs by 30% or more. They told me about an Indian doctor who lost several pounds by simply changing the way he inhaled, and about another man who was injected with the bacterial edotoxin E. coli, then breathed in a rhythmic pattern to stimulate his immune system and destroy the toxins within minutes. I have a feeling that was Wim Hof, but he doesn't actually elaborate there. I'm wondering. Anyway, they told me about women who put their cancers into remission and monks who could melt circles in the snow around their bare bodies over a period of several hours. It all sounded nuts. During my off hours from doing underwater research, usually late at night, I read through reams of literature on the subject. Surely someone had studied the effects of this conscious breathing on landlubbers. Surely someone had corroborated the freedivers' fantastic stories of using breathing for weight loss, health, and longevity. I found a library's worth of material. Sorry, I'm just having a quick sip of coffee. I found a library's worth of material. The problem was, the sources were hundreds, sometimes thousands of years old. 7 books of the Chinese Tao dating back to around 400 BCE focused entirely on breathing, how it could kill or heal us, depending on how we used it. These manuscripts included detailed instructions on how to regulate the breath, slow it, hold it, and swallow it. Even earlier, Hindus considered breath and healing to be the same thing, and described elaborate practices that were meant to balance breathing and preserve both physical and mental health. Then there were the Buddhists, who used breathing not only to lengthen their lives, but to reach higher planes of consciousness. Breathing, for all these people, for all these cultures, was powerful medicine. Therefore, the scholar who nourishes his life refines the form and nourishes his breath, says an ancient Tao text. Isn't this evident? Not so much. I looked for some kind of verification of these claims in more recent research in pulmonology, the medical discipline that deals with the lungs and the respiratory tract, but found next to nothing. According to what I did find, breathing technique wasn't important. Many doctors, researchers, and scientists I interviewed confirmed this position. 20 times a minute, 10 times, through the mouth, nose, or breathing tube, it's all the same. The point is to get your air in and let the body do the rest. To get a sense of how breathing is regarded by modern medical professionals, think back to your last checkup. Chances are your doctor took your blood pressure, pulse, and temperature, then placed a stethoscope to your chest to assess the health of your heart and lungs. Maybe she discussed diet, taking vitamins, stresses at work. Any issues digesting food? How about sleep? Were the seasonal allergies getting worse? Asthma? What about those headaches? But she likely never checked your respiratory rate. She never checked the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your bloodstream. How you breathe and the quality of each breath were not on the menu. Even so, if the freedivers and the ancient texts were to be believed, how we breathe affects all things. How could it be so important and unimportant at the same time? I kept digging, and slowly a story began to unfold. As I found out, I was not the only person who'd recently started asking these questions. While I was paging through texts and interviewing freedivers and super breathers, scientists at Harvard, Stanford, and other renowned institutions were confirming some of the wildest stories I'd been hearing. But their work wasn't happening in the pulmonology labs. Pulmonologists, I learned, work mainly on specific maladies of the lungs, collapse, cancer, emphysema, but dealing with emergencies, one veteran pulmonologist told me. That's how the system works. No, this breathing research has been taking place elsewhere, in the muddy digs of ancient burial sites, the easy chairs of dental offices, and the rubber rooms of mental hospitals. Not the kinds of places where you'd expect to find cutting-edge research into a biological function. Few of these scientists set out to study breathing, but somehow, in some way, breathing kept finding them. They discovered that our capacity to breathe has changed through the long process of human evolution, and that the way we breathe has gotten markedly worse since the dawn of the industrial age. They discovered that 90% of us, very likely me, you, and almost everyone you know, is breathing incorrectly, and that this failure is either causing or aggravating a laundry list of chronic diseases. On a more inspiring note, some of these researchers were also showing that many modern maladies, asthma, anxiety, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, psoriasis, and more, could either be reduced or reversed simply by changing the way we inhale and exhale. This work was upending long-held beliefs in Western medical science. Yes, breathing in different patterns really can influence our body weight and overall health. Yes, how we breathe really does affect the size and function of our lungs. Yes, breathing allows us to hack into our own nervous system, control our immune response, and restore our health. Yes, changing how we breathe will help us live longer. No matter what we eat, how much we exercise, how resilient our genes are, how skinny or young or wise we are, none of it will matter unless we're breathing correctly. That's what these researchers discovered. The missing pillar in health is breath. It all starts there. So that's all I really need to read from the introduction. But you get a gist of sort of where he's going to delve into in that book and what the book's all about. But I think it's just coming back to, I mentioned earlier something about being grateful for the ability to breathe and to experience these, just the simple things that we can tend to take for granted in our day-to-day lives, like especially those of us who are privileged enough to live above the poverty line and to be able to have food on the table, fresh water access, we've got a shelter, we've got a bed, all these sort of things. We must cultivate gratitude for all of these things in order to not only bring about a sense of fulfillment and satisfaction for ourselves and for our lives, and to just cultivate a more feelings of happiness overall. But gratitude is so important in that if we're grateful for what we do have, we tend to be able to manifest. I do like to use that word manifest. It's very new age now, but yeah, we do tend to manifest more of the things that are beautiful in life because we're focusing our attention on what we're grateful for. Therefore, we bring about more of these things through the law of attraction, which is basically focusing our thoughts with an intention on a certain positive thing will attract more of that more positives into our experience, because we're literally placing our attention or our energy on these positive things. And so we'll tend to manifest and create, because we are creators in this life. We will create more of the things that are beautiful and we're grateful for, and that will make our lives more joyous. Anyway, so that's all I'll do for the podcast today, but I'd just like to thank you guys very much for listening and paying attention and going through that with me. I would absolutely love if you guys could comment on these podcasts and give them a like, and even share them if you could, if you really enjoyed it. But at the end of the day, like, if I can, as I've said before, if I can make one person think a little deeper, or if I can affect one person in a positive way, if I can change one person's day for the better, that's what I do this for. Like, it's not about, because I realize that every single human interaction we have is incredibly powerful. We're literally contagious beings. Like, the energy we emit, the energy that we give out to other people when we interact with them, wherever the intention of that energy, or wherever our energy is when we interact with them, affects them in some way. We're expanding energy when we interact with someone. So if I'm in a really positive and confident and upbeat mood, and I'm happy and I'm giving people high fives, and I'm laughing, all of these things, that's going to affect people massively for in a positive light. So it's about doing the inner work and cultivating a state of positivity and a state of your own personal empowerment that is then able to go out and empower others. And that is so important, because we live in a world where, look, there is a lot of negativity, there is a lot of suffering, and I'll be the first to tell you that, because I've seen it firsthand, I've experienced it, and because I've experienced it and seen it, I just want to help eradicate it, because I know it's possible. I know if we all work together in this as a global community, we really can. So that's enough for the podcast today. Thank you very much for listening. once again, if you could please comment or just share your thoughts. I'd love to hear any feedback. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.